Hello everyone, this is Leo, and I just want to do a quick session recap. You may have seen my my efficient GM prep for a Blooming Vale. It's a scenario and adventure landscape for the game Symbaroum. I prepared that. I probably put in around, I would say, 2 hours and a half, 3 hours for the whole prep. There was a bit that was off screen, and we played last Friday. We had a session planned, and so I could put this prep into work. And what I'm doing today in this video is to do a little session recap and tell you what was actually used during play. And it's also a way for me to see how efficient I am. Is there a lot of material that was unused? Is there things that I forgot? Things that I should have prepared? That's what we will see today. I can just as a little reminder, Symbaroum is a game published by Free League Publishing from Sweden. It's a dark fantasy D20 system. It's a really cool game, a really cool setting. I gave a little recap of the campaign up to now and who are the PCs in a previous video. So if you're wondering the details of this story, where the PCs come from and all that, you can go watch that video. Second thing I want to say before we start is that English is not my native language, so forgive any mistakes I make. And maybe I don't speak that fast because it's not my native language. So do watch this video at 1.5 speed in YouTube if you want. It'll just make me look a bit more clever and quick. Okay, so before I start with the recap itself, I just want to show you what I actually had prepared for this session, like the final documents I was using as I was playing. So we'll go here in this is the Roll20. So this is one of the pages in the Roll20 that I call the Davokar page. I had a map here. As you can see, I scribble a lot. So here you can see the where they started from was Thistlehold, and I forgot to activate the pointer of the mouse again. But if you go in the bottom of the map in the middle, there's a town of Thistlehold. So in the previous sessions, they had walked all the way to the river Eanor, then followed the river, were ambushed by some bandits, went up a stream following a map that they had procured from a young apprentice that was part of this lost expedition that they're trying to go out in the forest to help. So they went along this little river and they saw a god spirit of the forest called Eox, which is a very big, basically a cow, like a buffalo kind of thing, but with funky colors and a very calm demeanor. So they followed that spirit in the night, and they found an ancient arena, crumbled arena, a ruin, and in it some undead people from another age that wanted to carve a rune in their foreheads. And they of course dispatched those undead, and they kept on going, and they found a bit later a temple to this spirit Eox, to this buffalo spirit. Which they explored, but it was mostly empty, and the underground passages were flooded, so they didn't push on there, and they went along further off. And when we started last session, they had reached the Blooming Vale. So the Blooming Vale, if you remember, it's an adventure landscape. It's about a 5-page landscape that's described in one of the modules for the Throne of Thorn campaigns called Wrath of the Warden. And it describes a ruin that was a palace in the bottom of a ravine, a secret valley called the Blooming Vale, sorry. And this lord of this palace was a Symbarian lord, so a prince that lived 1,000 years ago, and that was the lord of this region. And this family, Ambreagos was his name, his last name, they worshipped the spirit god Eox. So that's why the spirit god Eox is still in this area. And basically the spirit god, I had him as a presence, to guide the characters to try to purge the undead and the corruption from this area that is sort of his domain, in a sense. Of course, nothing is explained to the players outright, because those are very mysterious things from the Davokar forest that the characters do not know about necessarily, and that they have to do some research to find out about. So when we started the session, they were about to enter this valley, and they were expecting maybe some opposition. So what I had prepared, of course, I prepared this page here. I can zoom out a bit. So I had a few atmospheric images I always like to use. I put in the image with the little dark fairies up in the tree. That's because some dark fairies are following them right now. I put one where there's a man with an axe, and there's some brush, like thorny kind of brush, and that is because they are encountering that kind of vegetation. I put one with snow because it's during winter and there will be snow, and I have the last one in the bottom, which is basically it's an image that shows the statues. I just want to move it so you might see it completely. Can I? Yeah, like that. So this is part of the Blooming Vale. So that's artwork from Martin Grip from the book, and it shows an alley of great statues that is in the courtyard of this long lost fortress. And that's something they will find during the session. So I had that prepared. And what I had also prepared is on another page, I had, just a sec, this is the same one. I had the map. So spoilers here for people who want to play this. Please stop watching this video, basically. So I had this map here with, let me just zoom in. So that's the map of this fortress with you can see the statues there. And it's of course covered in trees and vegetation of the Davokar. And that's where they would end up once they find this fortress in the middle of the valley. But they're not there yet. The other thing that I had prepared is, I will show you, some of you will already have seen this one. It's a map. It's the map they're using to move along. That was given to them by a novice of the Ordo Magica that was accompanying the first expedition. A mage called Trobella, or Tobella, a kind of an alchemist kind of wizard, wanted to find the Vale because in this Vale there is a luxurious vegetation and very rare plants that grow there. And so that's why they left to find it. And now it's not loading for some reason, but you can see that there's the map and there's the way to the Vale, and just some information about the Vale. So that's what my players had in hand to try to understand what's coming up. The other thing that I had prepared was what I prepared with you the other day. So it was my document. So here it is. The yellow parts are what I used, so you can quickly see that I've used quite a lot. So I had I'll just scroll down, and as I do the recap, I'll get into more detail. So all the way down to here, and that's where we are. And I had statted up Trobella and Archilo and Faenia, her adepts, just in case, because they're under the influence of the Lord, the undead Lord, the Crypt Lord. The name of the Lord is Na Etekiel Ambreagos, and so they could become opponents because they're controlled, they're mind controlled. So we will get into that later. But I had two pages of actual text with 1 page of stat blocks. And the last thing that I had, because I also like to use paper, and I might do a video about that if you're interested, why I use paper and what are the advantages of using paper. But basically, I had this. It's in French. I didn't translate it yet. I don't know if I will. Maybe if there's like a major, like a lot of people want to see it, I might. But it's quite some work. So we'll see. We'll see. We'll see what happens. If you want me to translate these notes and to make them available, please say so in the comments. And as we are talking about comments and stuff, if you want to support this channel, of course, subscribe and like the videos, comment, because it's good for the algorithm. But most importantly, you can go on Drive-Thru RPG and check out my adventure that I published called Playing with Goblins. If you like it, buy it. It's that would be a great way to support this channel. So this here is a page where I describe the precious plants of the valley. I did with more detail on the Word document, but I had like basics here. I had some information here about the tower of the Ambreagos. So that's here. It's just like a little history of who they were. So I wrote basically that this tower was of course the key location of their domain. That around it were many little villages and cultivated lands. That was before Davokar was planted. Those lands were hidden amongst many trees, many wooded areas that were the domain of Eox, the buffalo, and that were sort of sacred to these people. When the elves came from the west, Na Etikel Ambreagos accepted the council of his Theurg. The Theurg is the Morphantics, so it's like priests and sorcerers at the same time that the Symbarians had. My players do not know about that yet. They don't know. It's all going to come as we play. We want to reveal the richness of this setting as we go along. And so I created this character. At Ari Canal was his chief Theurg, and he convinced Naetikel Ambreagos to do some demon summonings, because the Ambreagos family were very low in the hierarchy of Symbaroum, because they were sort of keeping the old ways from the ancient city where the magic was outlawed. I just forgot the name for a moment. Asbarast, I think it's called. And so their main rune from the Church of Haman is the rune of strength, and they were warriors and not mages. That's written in the Wrath of the Warden. They say that this family was not really a family of bookworms and mystics. And so they were not very well regarded, because at that time the most powerful princes of Symbaroum were all sorcerers, or were all trying to augment their mind and their body through sorcery and transformation. And so I just wrote that Ambreagos resisted that, and he didn't want to. But when the elves came, it sort of was the tipping point for this family, and they decided, okay, we don't have a choice. We need powerful allies. And so they tried to invoke a demon called Sarufag. This demon will come back later in the Throne of Thorns campaign, because that's the same demon prince that the lord, the lady of I have a problem with my names right now, of Agrella, the one that is from the Sacred of the Old Blood, the sister of the queen. She's going to make an alliance with this prince. So that's why I chose him, of course, because I want to plant some seeds that will sprout later. So they won't confront Sarufag, I don't think so, but they will learn about him if they explore this ruin correctly. So they tried to, of course, invoke this demon. The ritual did not work as planned, and the Theurg sort of became a monstrosity as the demon made a partial apparition in our world, and basically just made a horrible Blightborn monster of this Theurg. Naetikel fled the underground tunnels where they were doing these rituals and blew them up. Basically, he found a way to have them crumble in on the to block this monstrosity down in the under tunnels. So that's a part that I added. Those under tunnels are not don't exist in this adventure landscape, but I think that it's interesting to have. Once they deal with this crypt lord, they have more to do. If they can find artifacts, they can find knowledge, and they can also find a horrible monster. So those tunnels are under the tower. The elves, once they vanquished Symbaroum, decided to plant the red elms around this tower because it had this monster, this corruption under it. There was also the corrupted pool, where it was a pit where soldiers, humans that were transformed in Blightborn to become super powerful, and when it failed and they became monstrosities, they were put to death and thrown in that pool. And so that's also a source of corruption. So they put some red elms there too. What else? And so I wrote at the end of this page that Naetikel, if he feels really in peril, and if he's captured and can negotiate, he will tell the PCs that there are great treasures in the under tunnels that were that crumbled, because he wants to send them to their death. It's like his last recourse. It's like his emergency plan if all fails. Of course, he might get destroyed before he has time to do that, but if not, it's just another little piece of sweet possibility that we have in our ammunition as GMs. So this is what I do for locations. I do maps like that. I mean, I bought Wonder Draft and Dungeon Draft, and I did a nice ones, I think, for the Playing with Goblins module, and I will do more nicely done maps. I want to draw some, maybe some isometric maps I like a lot. So I'll try to draw some for the next installment of that series, but I will I'll put those efforts in for published material, because when it's just for me, we're very theater of the mind, our group, and I really like sketches, because I hate when we play theater of the mind. I hate it when the players don't know where they are, and when we just trade questions that are just basically geometric questions, like where am I, is he far, is he close, who's the closest to me. That is boring to me. That is really a game killer. So I use these little sketches just to make clear for everyone, look, this is the space, this is where you are, what do you want to do. But the actual action is happening in our heads, because those sketches are not nice enough. You can't sort of turn into board game mode when you're in front of that kind of sketch. But for me, it's just enough to keep things coherent and to make sure that what I describe stays the same from scene to scene, from session to session. So here I have the tower with the base of the tower, what's inside the base of the tower, and then I have the different stories, the levels of the tower. So the 5th level is the top with the throne room. There's the 4th level where I put his private chambers, and the private chambers of Naetikel are also the private chambers of Trobela and her crew, because Naetikel, for him, the Templars, there are also Templars that are enslaved. Those people are very precious to him because they hold information. They're not made confused by undeath. They are interesting companions to have. So he keeps them close. So they're sort of like guests of honor in a way. And then you have on the 2nd level, there's like apartments of chancellors and other scribes and the officers of the tower. 1st level is the guard room and the kitchens. And I just added a few details like that, and the ground level, which is actually on top of the base of this tower, is the great entry hall that is described in the adventure. There I just added a few a few details on what it looks like, what there's like a mosaic on the floor, what that looks like, and what's on the ground in the really underground portion. And then last notes that I had is just a few, just what's the trap that the Lord made. So there are the Templars at the entry level. There's Trobella upstairs. So I just put some notes there. The black those are spring elves, like corrupt spring elves on the right page. And what are they about? Why are they following the PCs? That's written there. So basically, they know these little fairies are, I don't know how yet, but they know that Mirizin, the barbarian of the group, which comes from the clan Eonai, which are spider worshippers, they know that he is destined to meet Xanatha. Xanatha is the white spider from the Tomb of Dying Dreams, which is another adventure. And I want to play that adventure. We will play it probably right after this. It's a bit similar, but because they're going to save some more Ordo Magica people, but I might change it at that point to make it less similar. But anyways, they will meet Xanatha. So I just wanted to have a bit of foreshadowing for that. And also Mirizin has a boon that is a demon marked, or I don't know, he has like a birthmark that is some kind of a stigma for him. And so this birthmark is the thing that sort of, it's like he's marked for this encounter with Xanatha. So that's what's written there. And here is just the ogres that are the porters of their troop. They just hired two ogres, so there they are, Klaga and Kultz. And that's previous notes that I had on another paper that I just put there about people that they heard about that live in Jakar. And on the right page, Eox is just, what will he do in this valley? Not much. He's just going to moo from afar, but he won't come in the valley because it's too corrupt for him. I don't need to have all the answers right now. It's not a problem to make that up later. So I don't know why he won't go in the valley, but he won't. And maybe he will actually, because as I said, what I prepare and what becomes canon as when we play is two different things. So let's go back to let's hide this. Let's go back to this, and we will start the recap right now. So I'll try to be quick. I don't want to waste anyone's time. So the beginning of the session, they were at the end of the valley. They were on top of the cliffs, because the valley is surrounded by very steep cliffs. And at the end of the valley, the two ends of the valleys, the cliffs are lower. They're like 50 paces high. And they're slanted, and there's rocks, and there's little levels, and they're more workable. When you're at the middle of the valley, where the valley is the widest, the cliffs are sheer, and they're 100 paces up. So that's where they arrived at first, and they saw the Violings, and they saw the tower in the distance, and they saw the big forest. But they couldn't go down there. It was too risky. So they walked along the cliff all the way to the end of the valley, where it's lower. And that's where they camp for the night. We start during the night. They are camping. They are doing some watches. And they decide to have no fire. They're basically... it's a rough time. They're on wet land. It's cold. It's winter. And they decide to not have any fire because they don't want to show where they are. And during this night, they can't see a thing, but they can hear, and they hear the Violings coming back and sort of moving about in the trees around them. And so it's just a presence, an ominous presence the whole night. I had them make some strong tests to see if they could recuperate, because it was so cold and they had no fire. But I could have been even more harsh on that. But they all succeeded their test. They were really lucky. And they're maybe super motivated. And so in the morning, they get up. The barbarian decides to shoot one of these crows because he says, it's good, we can eat it. And successfully shoots one down and plucks the feathers off and keeps it for later. And then they attempt to descend this cliff. So in the adventure they said it's 5 quick tests plus 5, which I find always like a multiple die rolls. It's always a bit strange for me. But I decided to play it as is because I said it's an endeavor, it's complicated. We'll see what happens, and I want to test these rules. You know, it's our 30th session, but we didn't have that many different kind of environments, and it's our first foray into explorer territory in Davokar. So I wanted to test something that was written as rules as written, let's say. And so they wanted to bring their 2 ogres and all their bags and their excavation equipment, because they've got the works to excavate a ruin. And so I said, okay, you need to get this rope all the way down, and it's not a straight way down. Sometimes it's just a steep cliff with little crumbling cliff. Sometimes it's rocks and big rocks. Sometimes you have to climb and with rock holes, and it's more vertical, and so there's little steps like that. So they did all their rolls. They managed to get down without getting hurt. I think one of them had 1 toughness lost. The ogres, the bigger of the 2, fell half the way, but was okay because it wasn't big drops. And so at the bottom, they're in front of the west end of the valley, the steep slopes, the thick section of brambles, thorns, all of that. I had the barbarian roll cunning to see if he would think about the Abors and the possibility that the Abors created some paths, some more workable paths, and he succeeds his roll. So I tell him that information. So now they know they can either go along the cliff where there is some brambles and it is obstructed, but not as much, or they can try to just hack their way machete style through the brambles. I described these tall, like it's trees with many little trunks and all really thorny, like super long thorns. Really a place where rabbits and foxes and abors and all that kind of wildlife prospers. And so they decided to go along the cliff later on. So I said, okay, let's go for that. Let's go for the cliff. So let's see. I had 6 things in the valley. You remember, I always keep short lists like that of things that can populate a certain part of an adventure, a section. And so in this case, it was getting to the tower. And so that's what I had prepared. The Vigilant was successful, like super successful. And they went down. So I had all these things to use, but you want to create a build-up. You want to, make it logical too. So the first thing I used was the puddles of boiling water. I didn't make it boiling as such, but when they at some point they walked along the foot of the cliff for 1 hour, and then they found this big mud flat with a bit of whitish water on top, which is the thermal water seeping through the mud. And beyond, they saw that the brambles were completely trampled, and there was a hole in the bramble wall where, like a tunnel, a path, and that probably the Abors created. And so I had to put the path there because, first of all, he succeeded, so he would find the path. And second of all, I had to give them a reason to go around, to go beyond the mud. And so they did. And they, again, made their strong tests to avoid getting stuck. They could, they could circumvent on the side of the pool, so it wasn't that hard. What I used is, I actually used a ruling that is inspired by the Year Zero engine. So I decided that if they roll, I think in some adventures in Symbaroum they do that too. But basically, if they succeed their strong check by 5 or more, they can give a success to somebody that failed. So they had basically to average out, to have all, like a few of them failed, but a few of them had successes with over 5 difference. So it evens out and they don't get stuck. So that's basically what happened. They successfully crossed the mud. They didn't boil or anything. They didn't have damage or whatever. And I just wanted to keep things moving along at that point. You know, they had a hard time with tons of rolls to get down the cliff. I didn't want to multiply even more yet. You know, you have to keep things moving. So they succeeded their rolls. They got in the tunnel, the path, and they started moving in the path really quickly with the barbarian in the front, and they went in that path for a while, and they came to a crossroads of paths, and there was the goblin net trap. So I put it on the side because they were using a path that's north to south, and there was one west to east that was leading out of the valley and to the ruin. And so I thought to myself, when humans come in the valley, they use the path that leads to the end of the valley, and the goblins, the cannibalistic goblins, that's what they like. If they can, they want to capture live human people, and so they put their trap going to the west. And the barbarian saw the pretty stones and translucent semi-precious stones in a pile, and he was wondering what that is, suspicious, came in, was doing the rounds with his bow, and the rest of the group arrived. And when the rest of the group arrived and he thought he was a bit safer, he decided to go check the bubbles and got whipped up in the net. So there was a little panic there. All the group sort of spread out, and they thought that there was an incoming attack, and he managed to take out a little knife and sort of cut himself out gradually. And so I didn't have any goblin ambush planned. I didn't want to get into fights right now because they'll have plenty of that when they get to the ruin. So but I wanted to keep the tension up. So what I did is that I used my cloud of green fireflies again, the coral sparks, because they were checking in all directions for enemies. And so the direction that leads to the ruin, towards the east, I told them that this path was turning a bit, had like an elbow in it, and at the end of this elbow, two big A-bores just emerged and were waiting like 20 paces off in the middle of the path, watching them, super calm. Because these A-bores eat the drone spores, and so they're unnaturally calm, and so that was weird. And also there were green fireflies coming through the all of this is in mist, remember, because there's thermal waters everywhere, and these thermal waters produce mist because it's winter. So it's super misty, and particularly in that direction, super misty. There's green fireflies coming out of it, and they know that those fireflies eat corruption, basically. So they know that that's a bad omen, and there's two A-bores watching them, and the barbarian is yelling in his net, trying to get out. So that was a nice moment, and they decided to, of course, pursue. Once the barbarian was released, they pursued the A-bores. At least they followed them. The A-bores turned around and left, and they followed them. And so I had them rolling. Things were picking up pace because we were moving into this story, and it has to get more dense as the session advances. And so I led them to the corrupt pool. So here you can see 6 things in the valley. Number 1 is the encounter with the A-bores. Put that there. I had the goblin net trap, and I had the cloud of green fireflies. Those 3 elements I used at the same time, basically, to create this moment. So I could have used these elements completely differently. It really depends on what the players are doing, and so it's like musical instruments that you're using to make a soundtrack to your players' actions. To try to bring this mood and bring this plot forward, but in a way that is subtle and that is flexible. that you can adapt to whatever they do. Okay, so they follow, they get to the pool, and the corrupted pool, here we are, as you emerge from the thorny bushes, a wide pool of foamy water. Maybe. So I didn't read that because first we played French and I hadn't time to translate it. I think I might, for the next one, write UC and just elements and like really words, maybe a few words, a few details, and then you hear, you smell. And I'm just thinking, because I realize that I don't read readouts. I don't. I always paraphrase. I always organize them differently. So I think, but I think I want to have the information in the right order that I want, that I would want to deliver it, so I can look at my page and really quickly say, okay, this is what they see. Let me describe it, but I'll improvise the description. So there you go. There's a description and a little detail of what is this pool. They saw it's pretty big, and with the foam and the green, those green fireflies being born in this mucus foam at the surface of this pool, and the pool is really warm and there's bubbles coming through the water, so it's really like a real thermal pool. So they're there and they see that there's actually two paths. They can go on the left, follow the Abors to the north, or they can go south and move around the pool from the south. So they were pondering, of course, what do we do, blah, blah, blah. I didn't let them ponder at all, because we're at the stage of this session that we want things to pick up in intensity. So I had the geyser appear. I really didn't think that the geyser would be in this pool. I thought, I don't know what I thought, but I didn't imagine it would be there, but I put it there. So the geyser erupts. So I described this rumble and trembling in the ground, and they're, oh shit. They immediately thought there's like 1,000 of those Abors charging in on us. And I had described that it's trembling, it's a bit like the sound, like what you feel when there's like many horses galloping nearby, you know? And so they immediately thought of that, which is logical, because they saw the Vilings had slave runes, so they could have slave runes too and be controlled. So they start running south, and they have to get around, and they're running, and I have them do the quick tests again. And of course they need the same mechanic as with the mud flat. They can help each other out, but two of them really fail and the others don't succeed enough. And the ones that fail are Lodome, the Templar, the female Templar in armor, and the flaming servant of Micariol. And so they're in the back. They can't run as quick. They're sort of, you know, there's parts of it that's really muddy and hard to get around. And so when the geyser erupts, they're in the range of the geyser, so they get completely splashed by boiling water, and there's like a little mini tsunami of water pushing forward, and they stumble, and they're sort of washed in that water. They take some damage, and now they're completely in mud because the water recedes, but they're really like knee deep in mud, and they're on the ground, and yeah, it's bad. And so I say it's still trembling. And I just ask them, what do you do? Who tries to help them? And finally, the two people go out to help them. They do strong tests again to try to get out, but I gave them, I think, a -3 or something. And they had to succeed this, because if they didn't, then they would really be boiled. Like the next geyser would be really do a lot of damage. I wrote here that you know, it throws PCs about, so that would have happened. They probably would have lost equipment, and they would have damage like the puddles of boiling water. You know, I would have put some damage in there. Anyways, they were helped by the others, and they really like barely succeeded their roles. They sort of, you know, they just came out. from the mud, and it blew up again behind them. And they hid in this labyrinth of trunks because they were at the center of the valley. So beyond this pool, that was like the limit to the zone where it's a big forest of really tall trees, of trunks that are really close together, and the branches are all mixed up in a very dense canopy above. And so they were there. So they sort of took a breather there. They ate a bit. They of course made the rounds to try to make sure nobody was attacking or anything. And I'm trying to remember. I think that at that point, because at some point they were attacked by the Violings. The Violings were there around them in the trees. And they decided, Mikariol, the flame mage, decided to try to burn them with a brimstone cascade. And he did. No, actually he failed. So he failed his spell. He didn't throw his sulfur high enough. But the birds, feeling attacked, decided to plunge on him and to attack him. And so there was a quick battle with two swarms of Violings coming in on them, and they were all attacking the mage. And of course the Templar came to his help, the Flaming Servant, and they sort of all quickly dispatched these Violings. But it was a really intense little fight. And what's fun is that he was singled out. It was clear that when you're a mage and you're facing another mage, because it's the Lord that controls these birds, you can expect to be singled out. And so that was a nice little touch there. And after that, they sort of took a breather. They ate. They healed up a bit, and they noticed these huge red elms around them. And they explored a bit, and they found I had that. Where did I put that? It was in my my little notebook. The notebook is this here. That's what I showed you before with the little pages. I really like the format because it's so small that you when you're GMing or DMing, you need to have concise, to the point information about what you're doing right now. So instead of having big pages with tons of info that you get lost in, I thought it's better to have a small thing that you can flip to the right page. So that's another thing with my documents. I think I will split the page in 4 and do really small, like the layout be different, that I can cut and put into a little book. Anyways, so so they where was I? Yeah, they found this little Elvish Waystone, and I was thinking, because Waystones is really, it's sort of like from other games, like do the elves of this game do Waystones? Not really. But I just thought, what the heck? There's many elves, many different elves. It's not because some elves do something that all elves do something. And I wanted to have just a little clue that these red trees were planted by the elves, because my players do not know that yet, and I want them to gain information about Davokar as they go. So they found this waystone with, on one side, the carvings of a tree, of one of the elm trees with golden fruits, and on the other side the same tree but with emerald fruits. And they noticed that this waystone was actually super deeply embedded in the ground, and that the carvings went also in the ground with the roots of these trees. So I'm thinking that in this waystone there's a kind of like a little mini power node or something. It's like a thing that helps these trees to prosper. But anyways, they were completely lost at that point. Their barbarian guide, Mirizin, botched his orientation, and he couldn't find, like, after this being in the net with the goblins, and then they ran and they followed the Abors, and he didn't know north from south. Everything It's like midday, it's a gray day, and there's mist all over the place. You can't see where the sun comes from. So they were lost, and he decided, listen, I'm going on the direction pointing the tree with the emerald fruits. That's where I'm going. I'm going in that direction, because they knew that the tower was of an emerald color, and that was a good idea, and that led them to the ruin more directly, which they reached. And what did I have for that? Well, basically at that point we were, it was almost midnight. I really wanted them to get to the ruin in this session, because they've been traveling for 3 sessions in Davokar, so we had to get there. So they found the wall. They were lost, so they didn't arrive by the entryway. They sort of arrived by the north, and they got in front of the wall. I can go back to the Roll20 here if I can. Can I close this? There you go. Okay, so here you can see where the fog of war is off. That's where they arrived. They arrived there. The barbarian climbed in the vines that are over these walls and took a peek. That's what he saw. He just saw the mausoleum that I described as a 4-story building, like pretty big, with tons of little arches, like a columbarium, to put dead people in. And so he looked at that. They decided to go around the wall, and they finally went to let me just bring that here. They arrived at the gates of this compound, and they entered finally. And because that's a funny thing, my players that are, let's say, the most strategically minded weren't there that day, Friday. They couldn't make it. So the group just went in. Like, they know that there's a lord. They've been informed that this lord is trying to build an undead army, and they just walked in the front door without hiding or anything. So that was crazy. But as I said in my notes, Na Etiquel wants to trap them. So there's no menace, no visible menace at all. So they're walking in, they're looking around, everything is still. Everything is motionless, and the Vilings are staying in the trees, the little green dots that I put, that's the Vilings. They're just making sure that they don't go back, they don't go away. If they try to go away, the Vilings will attack them with a vengeance. So they don't know that because they didn't try yet, but they went in, and as they started exploring, they went to the building on the north. You can see some tokens there, but that's on the GM layer, so they couldn't see those tokens. So they went there to try to open a door, and at that point, the barbarian saw a person up. The orange line on the tower is a balcony, and he saw in the arches of that balcony a silhouette of an individual, and that individual is actually Tobela. But they couldn't see, it's too far. But he saw someone watching and going away, and I told them that the main gate of the tower, where the doors were ajar, and when they were trying to start exploring the rest of this domain before the tower, the Templars decide to come out and go confront them. So that's our last scene of the night. The Templars come out. A blonde man, Eran Kalfas, with his female colleague. Was she a female? I don't remember if I described, but long brown hair, and the 2 squires in chainmail, and they come down very sullen, like very official, and they tell the group that they are on the lands of Na Etiquel Ambreagos, and that they must join his army, and that they are welcomed as honorary guests, and that if they are worthy, they could become officers of this army. And of course they refused. And so as they talked, they noticed that they had the slave runes in their foreheads. And like the Templars were upping the ante and saying, okay, if you don't come, you will be part of the vanguard of this army as undead. You will have to die. And when they said the ogre Vilde, he has the break link ritual. He wants to save everyone. He wants to, like 1 hour at a time, save everyone. And so he said, we can help you. I have the means to liberate you from this rune and from this enslavement. And so that's when Eran Kalfas said, I am sorry, but you must die. And they charged. And that's where we stopped. So that's a like next session is combat. And we'll see what happens because I know that the players that were missing were they're going to think, what? Why are we in the middle of this place like that in the open? So I believe that I will, depending on how quick they can dispatch these Templars or neutralize them, I think I will give the opportunity to retreat and to rethink. I won't swarm them like with 200 undead right now. But I might have Trobella or is it Trobella? Let's go see. There's one of the NPCs that has a let's go see the stat blocks that I made. So Trobella, she has Mind Throw and Illusory Correction, and of course she's an alchemist and a lore master. Okay, so Archilo has Bend Will, so I might have Archilo from a distance, from the top of the tower, try to bend the will of one of them and have the person come into the tower, probably one of the mystics. So I think probably Mikariel, because he was targeted by the Vilings, and the Vilings, you know, we can imagine that with the slave rune, maybe one of them went back to the tower to inform the Lord, or so I think that they know that there's a fire mage coming, and so they probably want to neutralize the mage first. So that's how it ended, and that's how we're done with this video too. If you want, tell me in the comments if you want me to share these notes. I'm thinking of opening a Patreon too, so maybe with a really low commitment, just to make this material available as I create it. But the point of this channel is not to make money. It's really not that, of course. It's just to try to continue to work on my craft and hopefully help other people with their games too. And on the other, like another thing that I would like that this channel could contribute to is to make some games that are not D&D more known to the public, because I like D&D. I think it's been so many years that I've played D&D. I know that D&D is fun and it's a cool game. Of course, it's a question of taste. I'm not into high fantasy that much, so that's why we don't play anymore. But there's so many things that irritate me in the game, like HP bloat and the leveling system, and so that's why I think that I'm not alone. I know there's thousands and hundreds of thousands of players out there that play D&D because they don't know any other game, but that are irritated by those characteristics of that system, and that they house rule for, you know, they house rule and house rule and house rule to try to get out of it, but they should just change games. So that's why I hope that this channel can make some games known, and from the inside. You know, I'm not doing reviews. I'm not talking about books as they come out. That will not be my thing. I will really continue to concentrate on how to make GM prep efficient if you are GMing published material. How to choose your published material and how to prep it. And of course, I'm doing that as I'm trying to get better myself. I don't own the truth on this. So that I will keep doing that. And I will also get you guys in on the adventure design for published adventures. Like for the next installment of Playing with Goblins, the follow-up adventure, I would like to do some live sessions where I create and you guys can give me input as I go. So if you would like that kind of experience, maybe comment in the comments. I would like to know if that's something you could like. Other thing I would like to do is just really quick presentations of the PCs of this campaign, just so it's easy for you to know who's who and what's going on in this campaign that I'm describing. And for now, that's my plans. So I will do those as I can, because I'm working very much this autumn, but I will do as much as I can. And please come back for the next video. So happy to have done this with you, and have some nice gaming with your friends. Bye bye.